Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to talk about the latest news and some of my own personal opinions on Microsoft's buyout of Activision. This is a rapidly evolving story, so I pray that by the time I get this video live it hasn't changed again, because a great number of regulatory bodies do not want this merger to happen. However, both corporations do, and a lot of you have been asking for my opinion about this, primarily on Twitter, sometimes in comments and other social media, wanting to know what I have to think about this as it relates to the future of the Call of Duty brand, which we'll talk about in the back half of the video. So we're just going to do one section as kind of a crash course on the hard factual news, and then part two is going to be my opinions on it. Gameplay today is, of course, Modern Warfare 2. So in the news side of this, I want to start in the European Union, and we're going to work our way back around to America. EU regulators initially rejected this merger and would not allow it in the European Union because they believe it would give Microsoft a near total monopoly over cloud streaming. I'm not sure why cloud streaming is important. We'll revisit that later. However, after Microsoft made some promises to go easy on the cloud and not do cloud exclusives and basically just promising to be a good boy, EU regulators changed their opinion and approved this merger, which was kind of surprising. And then Microsoft, less than a week later, announced a cloud streaming partnership deal with NVIDIA. So all of the Microsoft games, a lot of Xbox games, and almost all the Bethesda games will soon be coming to NVIDIA GeForce Now, which is NVIDIA's cloud streaming service, which seems kind of like maybe a broken promise to the European Union regulators, ? I thought they wanted less of that, but hey, what do I know? Moving back to America, the Federal Trade Commission has rejected the merger. It is still currently being fought. Both Microsoft and Activision want this. They're huge, influential corporations. So while there was an initial rejection, that is an ongoing battle. And in the midst of this battle, Sony jumped in saying that this was bad for business, that Microsoft would be really heavy-handed with exclusivities. It would give them a monopoly. And all I got to say is, of course, Sony would say this because this merger is bad for their business. It takes away their exclusivity. And the FTC actually, in the shenanigans and arguments over this, allowed Microsoft to send in a subpoena to Sony for information on their internal communications as it regards to exclusivity, which Microsoft and Activision plan to, or Microsoft more specifically, probably Activision probably can't because they're still partnered with Sony for exclusivity, to hammer it on and show that we've had exclusivity in this market for a long time and it's fine. The SEC got involved with this merger, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission, though it was only looking into the CEO Bobby Kotick for insider trading. It was a very brief investigation. It didn't seem to turn up very much, and there didn't seem to be any insider trading. Of note, Bobby Kotick and the rest of the Activision staff, or pretty much any shareholders, loves this because he himself is going to get a roughly, and this is estimated, this is not a hard fact, about a $250 million payout from the merger, putting him 1/4 of the way to being a billionaire if he's not there already, which is kind of insane. And now we're going to jump back across the pond to the United Kingdom, which is no longer part of the European Union thanks to Brexit. Their regulatory agency, the CMA, has rejected this merger, again saying that Microsoft will then have a monopoly over cloud streaming and a monopoly over games in general, and they worry that it'll lead to worse quality products. Now, there's so much going on here. On the corporate side of things, Phil Spencer at Microsoft said that Microsoft is doing this merger primarily because they want Activision's games. Call of Duty, of course, but mostly the big prize in this one is actually Activision Blizzard's mobile holdings, which includes King and a variety of other mobile games, and I think that's really what they want. I don't think Microsoft is super interested in Call of Duty in particular or Overwatch. I think they want that King Entertainment. They want a foot into the mobile gaming space. That is all for the hard news on this. Now I want to offer you my opinions in not any particular order. Starting with number one, this is a very big deal. I mean, literally, it's a $65 billion deal. It's a bigger deal than Elon Musk buying Twitter in terms of dollar value. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's a good deal for almost any of the products at Activision, because getting purchased by Microsoft is usually a death knell for products. Microsoft is the Grim Reaper when it comes to technology. If you look at Skype, Skype dominated everything until Microsoft bought it, then it got crappy. Then they bought Beam and turned it into Mixer to try to compete with Twitch before just giving up and selling to Facebook. They bought out Bethesda, promising they wouldn't do exclusivity, and then they did exclusivity, and then they made games like Redfall, and Don't even get me started on 343 Studios. I know people that work there, they're good people, and I don't say things like that to hate them, but 343 is just not Bungie. And the Halo franchise is not doing good. When Microsoft buys something, very rarely does it respect the technology, IP, or brand and treat it properly, which is kind of sad because I genuinely believe that Microsoft has an advantage over Sony in the entire gaming space because of its extensive PC partnerships, because of its extensive software support, because of its partnerships with dozens of other companies that Sony has to struggle to get going because it works closely with hardware manufacturers, because of a lot of things. And I think in this generation, the Xbox Series X is the better piece of hardware compared to the PlayStation 5. They're pretty close, but that's my personal opinion. The one thing the PlayStation 5 has that Xbox really doesn't is they have PSVR 2, which is kind of amazing. It's just not popular because it costs almost as much as the PSVR itself, as the PlayStation 5 itself, I should say. And Sony is getting involved in this, and they're getting a lot of, community support because they're saying they don't want exclusivity, they don't want to make worse quality products, blah, blah, blah. I think their interjections are more like projections because Sony is perfectly happy to run their very own exclusives exactly the same way that Microsoft used to when it comes to Call of Duty at least, and with other first-party exclusives. Call of Duty it was initially multi-platform, then exclusive to Xbox, and then exclusive to PlayStation, and what that exclusivity usually meant was that players would get their DLC later, back when that was a thing, and you had like a season pass that would give you 3 maps every now and then. And in the modern era, where we're kind of doing more games as a live service and continuous updates, they swapped it to PlayStation getting the exclusive survival mode or certain modes early. It wasn't very valuable, but it still seemed to ruffle gamers' feathers. And I gotta say, it has pretty much always sucked to play Call of Duty on the off console. For whatever reason, the console that is exclusive always performs better than the one that is not. And the one that is not often has a number of its own quirks and bugs that you have to fight through. Moving along, I also have no clue why regulators are focusing on cloud gaming so hard. Maybe they know something I don't, maybe the market is expanding, but I'm not really a cloud gaming believer. I don't do cloud gaming. I haven't personally had a good time with very much of it. I find that cloud gaming is very bandwidth intensive, which means only certain people can use it, and it's bandwidth wasting at that instead of running the game locally. Oftentimes lower quality, not only because you're not running it on a nice system, but it's also being compressed and streamed that then has to go through and get processed again before going on the screen. So you're always kind of playing a lower quality game, and there is always lag. It might be a tiny bit. You might not notice it, but it's there, and certain games lag way more. And I've done Google Stadia, I've done a variety of like little handheld cloud devices, I've done NVIDIA GeForce Now and some stuff like that. And I've really never had a good time doing game streaming, with the exception of there are some slower paced games. There are some games out there that aren't as fast and frantic as Call of Duty or Apex and the stuff that I like. And there are some games out there that are very rudimentary or have some neat, little tricks that help save bandwidth. There are some games where it like works. And I think it works pretty well if you do like the through Steam LAN streaming. Like you can stream just wired to wired device in the house. That's pretty nice. That's not, it's moving the data 20 feet and it's all local, and it doesn't even have to be compressed at that point because it just goes through your router. But in general, I don't like it. I don't know who does like it. I don't personally know a single person, a single gamer who is a cloud gamer. And that ranges from, professionals all the way to very casual gamers. They just don't seem to be into it. So I don't know what the focus on that is all about. I don't know why the regulators are so obsessed over cloud gaming. I don't think it's going anywhere, but hey, I could be wrong. And personally, I think Call of Duty has bigger problems than just who owns it right now. Call of Duty as a game, currently, to the best of my understanding, Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone's player base is declining. The player base of the game in general is on decline this year, unfortunately. It's suffering from an identity crisis because you've got 3 main studios and probably over a dozen support studios now having to crank out games, and they tried to merge the timelines and then separate them, and then Warzone 1 and Warzone 2.0. There's all sorts of quality issues with the game. It's being outperformed numbers-wise by Call of Duty Mobile, which we'll talk about in a different video later. And it's in an unusual kind of political positioning because Call of Duty has always been a slightly more conservative game. It very much so appeals to the strongman fantasy, power fantasy. It not only encourages people to join the military, often by playing it, but a lot of former service members love this game, and it's always been about like geopolitics and stuff like that. But more recently, the Gen Z crowd of gaming has been very much so into like LGBT stuff and progressive stuff, which is why Apex Legends is now probably, I would say, a profoundly queer game. There's a little bit of everything in that one, and Call of Duty is very slowly inching that way with their little pride banners and the more interesting fan arts and characters and stuff like that. And they've kind of got this problem in that the game is very conservative in a lot of ways, but the crowd they're trying to appeal to is not, so there's a sort of disconnect there. And I think that they need to find a strong identity in that, or pick a side maybe, like clearly Apex did of all things. So they've got lots and lots and lots of problems. That's just my personal opinion. I hope you enjoyed the news part of this video, and I hope you agreed with some of my opinions here. If you did or if you didn't, you can share your thoughts down below. I'll probably read most of the comments and respond to about a dozen of them. If you like this video, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.